You ever wonder what it feels like to cross a line you swore you'd never touch? To let your heart race for someone so tied to your past it feels like a betrayal just to think about them? That's where I found myself, standing in the wreckage of a breakup that left me hollowed out, like someone had carved out everything I thought I knew about love. My ex, Jake, shattered me, cheated, lied, and walked away without so much as a glance back. I was still picking up the pieces, trying to remember who I was before him, when his older brother, Ethan, stepped into my life. Not as some knight in shining armor, but as someone who saw the cracks in me and didn't turn away. It started innocently enough, late-night texts, his calm voice pulling me out of the darkness that Jake left behind. But then, one night, his hand brushed mine, and something shifted. Something dangerous. Was I falling for Ethan to get back at Jake, to twist the knife in his heart the way he'd done to me? Or was this something real, something so raw and deep it made my chest ache with both guilt and longing? I'm not proud of how it unfolded. I couldn't stop myself. Every stolen glance, every secret text we sent when no one was looking, felt like playing with fire. Ethan wasn't just Jake's brother, he was the one person I had no business wanting. Family ties, unspoken rules, the ghost of my breakup, they all screamed at me to stop, to pull back before I burned everything down. But the pull toward Ethan was stronger than any warning. It was like my heart was rewriting the rules, whispering that this wasn't about revenge, but about something deeper, something that could either save me or destroy me. Have you ever been so drawn to someone that every rational thought just melts away? That's what this was, a forbidden spark that could ignite everything I'd been trying to rebuild. And the scariest part? I didn't care if it did. I was too far gone, too caught up in the way Ethan looked at me, like I was more than the broken pieces Jake left behind. What would you do if the one person who made you feel alive was the last person you should touch? If every step toward them felt like a step toward disaster? Stick with me, because this story doesn't just end with a choice, it ends with a reckoning that changed everything. Let's go back to the beginning, to the moment my world started to unravel. I'm Lauren, 26, living in a cramped apartment in Chicago, the kind with creaky floors and a view of nothing but brick walls. I was trying to piece my life back together after Jake tore it apart. We'd been together for 3 years of dreaming about a future, meeting each other's families, building something I thought was solid. Jake was charming, the kind of guy who could make you believe in forever with a single smile. I fell hard, imagining a life with him, marriage, kids, the whole package. But then I found out he'd been seeing someone else for months, sneaking around behind my back while I planned our future. The betrayal wasn't just the cheating, it was how he looked me in the eyes and lied, day after day, like I was nothing to him. When I confronted him, he didn't even fight for us. He just packed a bag, said, "I'm sorry, Lauren," and walked out. I was left in that apartment, crying myself to sleep, questioning my worth, wondering if I'd ever feel whole again. That's when Ethan came into the picture. Jake's older brother by 4 years, Ethan was always the quiet one at family dinners, the guy who'd sit back with a half smile, watching the world like he was piecing together a puzzle no one else could see. He was 30, a graphic designer with a steady, grounded presence that felt like a safe harbor in the storm of my breakup. After Jake left, Ethan texted me out of the blue. Just a simple, "You okay?" I wasn't, and he knew it. We started talking, first about Jake, about the hurt and the anger, but then about everything else. Movies we loved, music that hit us in the soul, the way the Chicago skyline sparkled against the lake at night. He'd call me late, when the world felt too heavy, and his voice was like a lifeline, pulling me back from the edge. At first, I didn't think much of it. He was just being kind, stepping up where his brother had failed. That's what I told myself, anyway. But then things started to shift. One night, we met up at this dive diner, the kind with flickering neon signs and tables sticky with years of spilled coffee. I was ranting about Jake, about how he'd moved on like I was nothing, like our 3 years meant less than the dirt on his shoes. Ethan just listened, his dark eyes locked on mine, and for the first time in months, I felt seen. Not as Jake's ex, not as the girl who got cheated on, but as me. He leaned forward, his voice soft but firm, and said, "You deserve someone who fights for you, Lauren." The way he said my name, it wasn't just kindness anymore. There was a weight to it, a heat, like he was holding back something bigger. My heart skipped, and I pushed the feeling down, buried it deep. This was Ethan. Jake's brother. Off limits in every way that mattered. Crossing that line wasn't just wrong, it was a betrayal of a family I'd once been part of, a family that had welcomed me with open arms. Still, we kept meeting. It was casual at first, grabbing takeout, walking through the park under the cover of dusk, talking about anything but Jake. But every time we were together, there was this undercurrent, this unspoken thing growing between us. I'd catch Ethan looking at me a second too long, his eyes lingering like he was memorizing me. I'd find myself wondering what it would be like to close the distance, to feel his hand stay on mine instead of pulling away. I hated myself for it. This wasn't just about crossing a line, it was about betraying everything I'd once held dear. Jake's family had been my family, too, and now I was teetering on the edge of something that could shatter it all. But the more I tried to pull back, the more I wanted to lean in. Have you ever felt something so wrong it starts to feel right? Like the universe is daring you to take a step you know you'll regret? That's where I was, standing on the edge of something I couldn't name, something I wasn't sure I could walk away from. The first time it happened, it wasn't planned. It was a rainy Thursday night, the kind where the city feels like it's holding its breath. Ethan invited me over to his place to watch some old sci-fi flick he knew I loved, something about spaceships and dystopian futures that we'd laughed about over text. Jake was out of town, so it felt safer, somehow, like we could pretend we weren't playing with fire. Ethan's apartment was small, cluttered with sketchbooks and vinyl records, the kind of place that felt like it held 1,000 untold stories. We sat on his couch, a bowl of popcorn between us, laughing at the cheesy special effects and bad dialogue. But as the night went on, the movie faded into the background, and it was just us, talking about everything and nothing. He told me about his dreams, how he wanted to leave Chicago someday, start fresh in a place where no one knew his name. I opened up about my fears, about how Jake's betrayal made me feel like I'd never be enough for anyone. It was raw, vulnerable, the kind of conversation that strips you bare. And then, there was this silence. Not the awkward kind, but the kind that's heavy with everything you're not saying. Ethan looked at me, and I swear, it was like he could see every broken piece of me, every scar Jake left behind. His hand reached for mine, slow, tentative, like he was giving me a chance to pull away. I didn't. His fingers laced with mine, warm and steady, and my heart was pounding so hard I thought it might break. "Lauren," he whispered, his voice low and rough, "this is a bad idea." But his eyes told a different story, they were burning, pulling me in. And before I could think, before I could talk myself out of it, I leaned in, and he met me halfway. That kiss was like lightning, electric, overwhelming, a collision of guilt and want and fear all at once. We pulled back, both of us breathing hard, our eyes locked like we were trying to figure out what we'd just done. We knew we'd crossed a line, one we couldn't uncross, and the weight of it hung in the air like smoke. The next morning, I woke up in a panic, my mind racing with what-ifs. What had I done? This wasn't just about me and Ethan, it was about Jake, his family, the whole tangled mess we'd just stepped into. I told myself it was a mistake, a one-time slip, something we could bury and forget. But then Ethan texted me, "Can we talk?" And I went, because deep down, I didn't want to let go. We met at a park, far from anyone who might know us, and he looked as torn as I felt. His hair was messy, his eyes shadowed with the same guilt that was eating me alive. "I don't regret it," he said, his voice low but steady. "But I know what this could do to us." To Jake. I wanted to scream that Jake didn't deserve our loyalty, not after he'd thrown me away like I was nothing. But Ethan was different, he cared about his family, even if Jake had fractured it with his own mistakes. And that made it worse. Because I was falling for someone who was trying to do the right thing, even as we dove headfirst into the wrong one. We tried to stop. God, we tried. For a week, we didn't text, didn't meet, didn't even acknowledge each other. I told myself I could move on, focus on healing, leave this dangerous thing behind. But the pull was too strong, like a current dragging me under. I'd see Ethan's name light up my phone, and my resolve would crumble like it was never there. We started sneaking around late-night drives through empty streets, hidden corners of dive bars, places where no one would recognize us. Every moment felt stolen, laced with the thrill of getting caught and the guilt of knowing we could hurt people. Jake wasn't just my ex, he was Ethan's brother, his flesh and blood. If he found out, it wouldn't just be drama, it'd be a war, one that could tear their family apart. And yet, every time Ethan's hand found mine, or his lips brushed my neck, I forgot why we should stop. It was like the world narrowed to just us, and nothing else mattered, not the consequences, not the pain we might cause. But the close calls started piling up, each one a reminder that we weren't as careful as we thought. One night, we were at a bar, tucked away in a booth, when one of Jake's friends walked in. We froze, my hand slipping out of Ethan's under the table, my heart hammering like it was trying to escape my chest. The friend didn't notice us, but it was a wake-up call, a cold splash of reality. We were playing a dangerous game, and the stakes were climbing higher every day. I started questioning everything. Was this about revenge? Was I using Ethan to hurt Jake, to prove I was worth more than he thought? Or was this real, the kind of love that doesn't care about rules or consequences? I looked at Ethan, his jaw tight, his eyes clouded with the same questions, and I realized we were both drowning in this. The guilt was eating us alive, but the want was stronger, pulling us back together no matter how hard we fought it. And that's when Jake called me out of the blue, his voice calm but pointed, saying he wanted to meet. To talk things over. My stomach dropped, a sickening lurch. Did he know? Had he seen something, sensed something? The walls were closing in, and I wasn't sure we could keep this secret much longer. Jake's call threw everything into chaos, like a grenade lobbed into the fragile world we'd built. I didn't tell Ethan at first, I couldn't find the words. How do you tell the person you're falling for that your ex, his brother, wants to see you, and you're terrified he's onto you? I agreed to meet Jake at a coffee shop, my nerves screaming with every step I took. He looked different when I saw him, tired, maybe even regretful, his usual confidence dulled. He said he missed me, that he'd messed up and wanted to make things right. His words hit me like a punch, stirring up old wounds I thought I'd buried. I didn't love Jake anymore, but hearing him apologize, seeing that flicker of the guy I used to know, it messed with my head. I sat there, my heart a battlefield, torn between the past I'd lost and the secret I was keeping with Ethan. I told Jake I needed time, my voice shaking, and I left, my mind spinning with questions I couldn't answer. When I finally told Ethan, his face darkened, not with jealousy, but with fear, raw and unfiltered. If he finds out, Lauren, it's not just us he'll hate. It's me. His brother. I could see the weight of it pressing down on him, the betrayal of family, the kind of wound that doesn't heal. Ethan wasn't like Jake, he cared about his family, even after all the ways Jake had fractured it. But instead of pulling away, he pulled me closer, his hands framing my face like he was choosing me over everything else. That night, we didn't just kiss, we poured everything into each other: anger, guilt, love, fear, all of it tangled together. It was like we were trying to outrun the consequences, to hold on to this thing between us before it slipped away. But consequences don't wait for you to be ready. Jake started texting more, his messages sharper, like he could sense I was hiding something. He'd ask why I was distant, why I wasn't myself. I dodged him, but it was like he was circling closer, sniffing out the truth. Then, one night, Ethan's phone buzzed while we were together, tucked away in a quiet corner of the city. It was Jake, asking where he was. Ethan lied, said he was working late, but his voice shook, and I could see the panic in his eyes. We both knew the clock was ticking, that every lie we told was another crack in the foundation of this thing we'd built. The more we hid, the more it felt like we were constructing a house of cards in the middle of a windstorm, just waiting for it to collapse. I started questioning everything, turning the pieces over in my mind until I couldn't sleep. Was I falling for Ethan because he was safe, because he understood my pain in a way no one else could? Or was it because he was forbidden, a way to lash out at Jake, to take something back after he'd taken so much from me? The lines were blurring, and the guilt was suffocating, a constant weight in my chest. I'd lie awake at night, imagining Jake finding out, picturing the look on his face: anger, betrayal, maybe even a flicker of hurt. And Ethan, he was just as torn. He'd talk about his family, about how close they'd been before Jake's mistakes started pulling them apart. He didn't want to be the one to break them for good, to drive a wedge that couldn't be undone. But every time we tried to end it, to walk away, we'd end up back in each other's arms, like addicts chasing a high we knew would destroy us. Then came the night that changed everything. Ethan and I were at his place, tangled in each other, the world outside forgotten for a moment. The doorbell rang, sharp and sudden, cutting through the quiet. It was late, too late for a casual visit. Ethan froze, his eyes wide with the same fear that was clawing at me. "Stay here," he whispered, pulling on a shirt and heading for the door. I hid in his bedroom, my heart hammering so loud I was sure it could be heard across the apartment. I pressed myself against the wall, listening as he opened the door. It was Jake. His voice was sharp, accusing, cutting through the air like a blade. "You've been weird, man. What's going on?" Ethan played it off, his voice steady but strained, like he was walking a tightrope. I couldn't hear everything, but then Jake's tone shifted, colder, more pointed. "I saw Lauren's jacket in your car last week. You got something to tell me?" My blood ran cold, my breath catching in my throat. We weren't careful enough. The truth was slipping out, and there was no way to pull it back. After Jake left, Ethan came back to the bedroom, his face pale, his hands shaking. We didn't fight with anger, but with desperation, our words spilling out in a rush. He wanted to come clean, to tell Jake before he figured it out himself and made it worse. I wasn't ready. I was terrified of the fallout, of losing Ethan, of destroying their family and carrying that guilt forever. But the more we hid, the more it felt like we were betraying ourselves, too. I started noticing the toll it was taking. Ethan's smile didn't reach his eyes anymore, and my hands trembled every time I saw Jake's name on my phone. We were in love, no question about it, but it was a love that came with a cost, and we were both paying it in pieces of ourselves. In the end, it wasn't Jake who forced the truth out, it was us. One night, Ethan looked at me, his eyes heavy with everything we'd been carrying for months. "We can't keep doing this," he said, his voice breaking. "Not like this." I knew he was right, but the thought of letting go felt like losing a part of myself, like cutting out my own heart. So we made a choice, not to end it, but to face it. We told Jake. Together. We sat him down at Ethan's apartment, the air thick with tension, and we laid it all bare. It was messy, ugly, raw. Jake's face went from shock to rage to something worse, hurt, deep and real. He didn't yell as much as I expected. Instead, he looked at Ethan like he was seeing a stranger, and he walked out without a word. He didn't speak to Ethan for months. Their family splintered, and I carried the weight of that, knowing I'd been the spark that lit the fuse. But here's the twist, the part one didn't see coming. Ethan and I didn't stay together. Not because we didn't love each other, we did, fiercely, in a way that still aches when I think about it. But love built on secrets, on stolen moments and lies, has cracks you can't always mend. We tried to make it work, to build something real out of the ashes, but the guilt, the broken trust, it lingered like a shadow we couldn't shake. Every time we looked at each other, we saw the cost of what we'd done, not just to Jake, but to ourselves. We parted ways, not with anger or dramatic fights, but with a quiet, aching goodbye that felt like losing a piece of my soul. Sometimes, I lie awake and wonder, was I drawn to Ethan to hurt Jake, to prove I could take something back? Or was it real, a love that burned too bright to last? Maybe it was both, tangled together in a way I'll never fully unravel. And that's the hardest part, living with a question that doesn't have an answer, a truth that shifts depending on the light. What would you do if love came with a price like that? If it meant risking everything, family, trust, yourself, for a chance at something that felt like salvation? I want to hear from you. Comment below, have you ever crossed a line for someone you couldn't resist, knowing it might cost you everything? Share this story if it hit you hard, if it made you feel the weight of those stolen moments. Let's talk about it. Type revenge or love in the comments. What do you think this was for me? I'm still trying to figure it out, and maybe you can help me see it clearer.